I say, well, how many of you actually put your family functions, date night with your spouse, or little Timmy's T-ball game, or little Luann's dance recital? How many of you put those things on the calendar first and then put all your work appointments and your meetings and so forth? And not a single hand stays up. Most people put their work stuff first, and then they kind of give their scraps to their family. And that's not for me to judge. But what I try to tell them is, well, by definition, you're not family first. If you don't put the family on the calendar first, then you're not family first. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with putting work stuff on the calendar first. Just don't go around masquerading that you're family first, because by definition, you're not. And the reason I can say that with love and grace and compassion is because I've had to eat that piece of humble pie a few times in my life, that I keep thinking in the back of my mind, I'm family first. But again, my behavior wasn't in alignment with that. And I've had to make some changes. And, now I'd like to believe with confidence that I'm much more family first and much more conscious of what my children need from me than I have been in the past. But I'm always going to be a work in progress with that. And I'm always going to be under construction. But anytime we're not living in alignment, we're going back to that quote, where our behavior doesn't match our beliefs, we can never be the best versions of ourselves if those things aren't in alignment. So it was actually doing damage for me to go around telling everyone I'm family first, and yet I was letting my business and my career actually dictate most of my decisions.
Yeah, and you have to follow that old etiquette of what you commit to first, you stick to. You don't just cancel it because something better comes along. And
Exactly.
Oftentimes, as you said, you put your family first on that calendar, and then it'll fill itself up with other activities, but don't pull them off just because something better came along. You really have to be disciplined with that.
Yeah. And with my parenting philosophy, I mean, and again, I'm very reflective and self-aware about these things. I mean, I have very open discussions with my children that because I found what I am so passionate about, because I believe I found my calling and my why, that really drives me, and that there will be times that I have to make personal sacrifices. There will be times where I'll miss T-ball games and dance recitals because I'm pursuing something I'm passionate about. And I personally believe that one of the best gifts I can give my children is modeling the behavior of finding what it is you love, finding what it is you're good at, finding where those 2 points intersect, and then spending as much time in that strength zone as possible. So, I tell my children, hey, you guys are my priority. I would drop everything and stop everything for you if need be, but I do believe these things can coexist. I believe I can be a very present and connected father, and I also believe that I can fill other people's buckets and pour into my work. And there will always be a little bit of overlap, and there'll always be a few times where those things cross and I have to make a decision. And when I make the decision of taking a trip to go speak or to do something else that's on the business side, then I just make sure that I explain that to my children, that this is not from lack of love or lack of commitment. At this point in time, I believe this is an opportunity that will allow me to fulfill my passion to a higher degree. And I want them to understand that, but I also want to model that, because I have the hopes that when they grow up, they're going to find something they're just as passionate about as I have.
Yeah, yeah. I just realized what it is that I really love about your website, and you don't see it very often. You have a picture of your kids with you on the website, a big one.
Yeah, right on my bio page. I'm proud of that pic.
You should be. You should be. Man, you've already imparted so much wisdom for everybody to hear and apply. I want to go back a little bit to your background and where life started for you, whether that's in school or business. But what were some of those early decisions that you had to make? Playing sports, how your family treated you, et cetera. Where'd life begin for you on this path?
Well, I always reflect back that basketball was my first identifiable passion. I played lots of sports and did lots of activities as a kid. I mean, everything from skateboarding and BMX biking to martial arts to the conventional sports of baseball and football and basketball and so forth. But for some reason, I was always drawn back to basketball. And, I played basketball in high school and was fortunate enough to play in college. Piggybacking on what I just said, that was actually a nugget that a mentor of mine gave me that said, hey, find what you love, find what you're naturally good at, and find where those two things intersect. And that's at least going to put you on the right path to finding your purpose and your passion. And thankfully, I heeded that advice, and I knew that basketball was so important to me. But when it came clear that I was not going to be able to continue playing after college, and I still wanted to find a way to be involved in the game, and utilize my skill sets. I'm very thankful that I have a rather naturally high emotional intelligence, and I connect well with people. I've always been somewhat of a people person. So I figured taking the natural talent of connecting with people and taking my passion and love for basketball and having those two things intersect to be a basketball performance coach just seemed to be the natural fit. And I'm very thankful that I chose that path because it was a great path for me. I absolutely loved being a basketball performance coach. And I focused primarily at the youth and high school levels because those were the ages that I was most, they're most near and dear to my heart about being not only someone that could help them improve their performance, but I also believed I could be a positive role model and influence on their lives. And I did that for almost 20 years before I made a very calculated pivot a couple years ago. I was just ready for a change in my life and decided to move over to the corporate space and now teach businesses and organizations how to improve their performance using the same mindsets and rituals and routines and habits as elite basketball players. So basketball has always been a very pivotal, feature in my life. And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. How do you know that you're good enough to become a coach, just to start out with? Because I think a lot of us lack the confidence to say, hey, I'm good at this. I'm going to coach somebody else how to do this.
It's funny. I don't remember there being kind of like a light bulb moment. I just remember that I was always devouring information on how to improve performance. And, I'm 43 years old or about to turn 43 years old. So when I'm coming out of college, that's in 98, 99. I mean, that's really when the internet was still budding and it wasn't the plethora of information we can find today. So I was reading every book I could watch or read, watching every video I could watch. I was attending every clinic I could. I was just trying to soak everything up. And, I figured from a coaching standpoint, I didn't need to know more than everybody else knew. I just needed to know more than the people I was going to be coaching. And, so it was okay that I wasn't the top performance coach in the world when I graduated college. Did I have enough valuable information and training expertise that I could help youth and high school players improve their performance? And I believed that I did. And that was all that I needed to at least get started. And then I still stayed on my quest of constant growth and development. So then as I started to up-level myself as a coach, then I could tackle bigger things. I could work with more elite level players and speak at bigger time events and work with higher level programs. So it was this kind of, as I continued to raise my game, then I was able to raise the level of the person I was able to work with.
So if I hear you right, throughout your career, you always went through some type of ongoing education to just continue to be better at what you were doing, which has allowed you to get to the level that you were at eventually.
For sure. And I'm still in that right now. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I try to go through life with eyes and ears wide open and, learn as much as possible, gather as much feedback as possible, and then constantly make, tweaks to what it is that I'm doing in my own belief systems. But yeah, that will never be an end game for me. I will have never arrived and I will have never, stick the fork in it and say, hey, I know everything I need to know. This is a constant process. I'm hoping that I'll continue to be learning and growing and developing till this whole show's over for me.
Yeah, and what's amazing about that attitude and positioning that you're taking, I mean, the people that you've worked with, using Kevin Durant as an example, are all at the top of their game. I mean, these guys are athletes, like none other. And here you are saying, even though I've worked with Kevin and the likes of him, I still want to continue my education and be better.
Oh, for sure. One of the things that's neat, and I only realized this through hindsight, that's neat about my career path was I've been able to see basketball's elite from two different vantage points. I worked for two nationally renowned high schools here in the Washington, D.C. area, Montrose Christian School, which is where Kevin Durant went, and DeMatha Catholic High School, which has produced a whole host of NBA players, all-star Victor Oladipo, last year's number one pick in the draft, Markelle Fultz. So I had a chance to be around, a dozen future NBA players when they were 14, 15, and 16 years old. So I got to see them before they became, the high performers and high achievers they are now. Well, that also led me to work with Nike and with Jordan Brand and with USA Basketball, which then allowed me an inside track to watch some already established high performers. And I got to work events for LeBron James and Kobe Bryant and Steve Nash and Chris Paul. So I've been able to see both. I've been able to see high performers before they were high performers, and I've been able to see the behind the scenes and unseen hours of those that already were. And I've been able to learn a ton from both vantage points. And, I would say that earlier in my career, I lacked humility, and I have so much more humility now, and being able to say that, hey, even though I'm 43, there's still tons of things I can learn from a 14 or a 15-year-old basketball player. Like there's no one on earth that doesn't have something that they can teach me. And it's up to me to find what that thing is. Some people are just obvious. I mean, if you find someone that's been doing what I've been doing for 30 years, clearly if I sit down with them, they're going to be able to impart some incredible knowledge and wisdom. But I think there's something I can learn from every human being on the planet, but it's my responsibility to mine for that gold and figure out what it is. And I'm I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'd love to hear your perspective, but I learn stuff from my own children. I mean, all of the time, just on different ways to look at things, or a different perspective, or just even a different way to view life. So I try to be incredibly open to that.
Yeah, there's a book out. It's called Through My Child's Eyes. And what I love about I don't even need to read the book. It's just the title encouraged me to look at the world through my kids' eyes. And, a lot of times they see things for the first time that we've taken it for granted for the last, 20, 30, 40 years, depending on how old you are. And it's amazing how wonderful this world is that we live in and the people around us. And you only have to look through your child's eyes to see some of that, because we've either forgotten or we weren't paying enough attention. And so I love what you're saying about learning from your kids, because you can absolutely learn from them if you just take the time to open up to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that you said earlier about having a high emotional intelligence. And I think that there's a lot of equity in that. And I believe a lot of people have that, but don't recognize it as a skill set or something that would qualify them to do work in a specific field that they might not be paying attention to.
No, there's truth to that. And if I'm going to further clarify, I'll say that I've always had the ability to connect with other people and establish trust and develop friendships, whether, as a student or as a teammate in sport. That stuff always came rather natural to me. And I think I had the raw materials of having a high EQ from an early age, but I wasn't able to really refine it and sharpen those skills. This has been rather recent, probably the last 5 or 6 years, before I really gained a heightened sense of self and higher self-awareness to be able to best utilize those tools. And, I'm not a high academic guy. I'm not a dummy by any means, but I'm not a high IQ guy. I'm much more of a high EQ guy. And I embrace that. I'm okay with that. I have enough intellectual knowledge to make sure I can survive on this planet. But I think that where my talent really lies is on the EQ side, is being able to actively listen to others and to find what their dreams are, as well as the things that are scaring them and their insecurities, and find a way to bridge the gap and make a very strong connection. And I've been able to sharpen that sword immensely as I work on the connection with my children, as well as my clients and those I work with. And I was also lucky to get this piece of advice very early in my coaching career: is you have to connect first and coach second. It has to be in that order, that if you can establish a solid level of trust and connection with the folks you're going to work with, then the coaching portion, the sets and the reps and the exercises and the workouts, that stuff's easy if you establish that connection where they want to give you their best effort. They don't want to let you down. They want you to hold them to a high level of accountability. So for me, establishing the connection before I ever try to teach has been, one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given.
Yeah. I interviewed Mark Taylor earlier this year. He's the CEO of In-N-Out Burger, and he talks a lot about some of the best times in his career were when he was running a small store restaurant and being able to build his team and connect with them and learn that, that what this job meant to them, their families and their kids, and, the success of just even having health benefits and things like that. Your point is so important, that we connect with people.